Hi guys, welcome back. This is Linda's Mafia Romance audio stories. Today's story is about a broken wife left for dead who becomes a mafia kingpin's queen, trading fear for iron power.
The street was a black tongue of asphalt licked raw by the night. Street lamps flickered in uneven rhythm, casting palpitating pools of orange that did nothing to warm the cold seeping up from the sewers. Valerie knew that cold. It lived inside her now, had made a home in the marrow of her bones over the 5 years she had called Derek her husband. She used to mistake that chill for strength, the kind that kept her quiet when he raged, kept her still when his hand flew, kept her breathing when he pressed her throat against the kitchen counter and asked if she remembered who owned her. She remembered now. Lying on her side, cheek pressed to a gutter that smelled of rust and rain that had fallen 3 days ago, she remembered everything. The way Derek's voice had sounded when he told her they were going for a drive. The way his knuckles had whitened on the steering wheel. The way he had pulled into this dead-end street, killed the engine, and turned to her with an expression she had never seen before, not anger, not even hatred. It was relief. The relief of a man who had finally found a solution. He had beaten her before. Never like this. Valerie tried to move her left arm. A hot wire of pain laced from her shoulder to her ribs, and something inside her clicked, a sound she felt more than heard, like a branch breaking under snow. She stopped trying. Her right hand lay palm up on the asphalt, and she watched her own fingers twitch as if they belonged to a stranger. Her wedding ring caught the distant glow of a security light from a shuttered warehouse. It was a cheap thing, a thin band of tarnished silver that Derek had bought from a pawn shop the morning of their courthouse wedding. He had called it romantic. She had called it enough. That had been her first mistake, believing that enough was a word that applied to love. She heard his car tires squeal somewhere to her left, but she did not turn her head. There was no need. She knew the sound of his departure the way a dog knows the click of a latch. It was the same sound he made every time he walked out after a fight, except this time, he had made sure she would not be standing when he returned. He had taken her purse, her phone, her jacket with the hidden pocket where she kept the $30 she had been saving for a bus ticket she never bought. He had taken everything except the breath that still moved in and out of her lungs, each cycle shallower than the last. The sky above her was the color of a bruise, deep purple bleeding into black. No stars. The city had killed its stars years ago, traded them for neon and surveillance cameras that never seemed to point in the right direction. Valerie wondered if anyone would find her before the cold did. She wondered if anyone would care. Her mother had been dead for 6 years. Her father had left before she learned to tie her shoes. Derek had made sure she had no friends, no coworkers who knew her real name, no neighbors who would risk his temper for the sake of checking on the woman in 4B who never laughed anymore. So this was it. This was the ending that every slow erosion had promised. She had thought it would come with more ceremony, a hospital bed, perhaps, or a police report filed by someone who used the word domestic as if that made the violence smaller. Instead, she was bleeding onto a street that had no name she knew, and the only sound was the distant thrum of a highway that carried people away from places like this. Her vision began to stutter. Lights dimmed at the edges, then brightened, then dimmed again, like a failing bulb. She thought of the small fern she had kept on the kitchen windowsill, the one Derek had thrown against the wall last spring because its shadow annoyed him. She had swept the dirt into a dustpan and cried over the broken pot, not because the plant had been beautiful, but because it had been hers. Just one thing that was hers. And now she was lying in the gutter, and her blood was tracing thin red rivers toward a drain, and she realized she had never replaced that fern. She had never bought herself another single thing that belonged only to her. That thought hurt more than the broken ribs. Time became a substance she could not measure. Minutes or hours passed, she could not tell. The cold deepened. Her lips felt cracked and foreign. She tried to call out once, but her throat produced only a wet rasp that died before it reached the nearest wall. No one was coming. She knew that. And still, her heart kept beating, stubborn and stupid, refusing to accept what her mind had already signed. Then the light changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in the quality of the darkness, as if something large had moved between her and the city's faint glow. Then headlights. Not the drunken swerve of a civilian car, but a string of them, 3 vehicles moving in tight formation, their engines a low growl that vibrated through the asphalt and into her shattered chest. She thought of Derek's car, hope flaring despite everything. Maybe he had changed his mind, maybe he had come back to finish it or to save her, she no longer knew the difference. But the headlights were wrong. They were too many, too deliberate, arranged in a V-shape like migrating birds. The convoy slowed. Tires crunched over loose gravel. Doors opened and closed in sequence, quiet and efficient, not the chaotic slam of panicked men. Footsteps approached. Hard saws, many of them, moving with the practiced gait of people who had never once feared a dark street. A shadow fell over her face. Valerie tried to look up. Her neck refused. All she saw was the outline of a man's jaw, sharp as a blade, and the glint of a cufflink that caught the last dying light of a failing street lamp. He smelled of leather and cold metal and something else, something clean, like alcohol used to sterilize wounds. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he crouched beside her, and she felt his gaze travel over her body the way a coroner might assess a fall victim. Clinical. Patient. Without horror. "She's still breathing," said a voice from somewhere behind him. Not the crouching man. Someone else, lower in the chain. The crouching man did not acknowledge the observation. He reached out, slowly, and touched the silver ring on Valerie's finger. His thumb brushed the dented metal once, twice, as if reading Braille. Then he lifted his hand away and spoke. His voice was quiet. It had to be, because Valerie's hearing was beginning to tunnel, but she heard every word. Her husband did this. It was not a question. He already knew. Another voice, closer now, Derek Vance. "We ran the plates on the sedan that pulled out of here 7 minutes ago. He's heading toward the interstate." The crouching man was still looking at Valerie. She could feel the weight of his attention like a physical thing pressing on her sternum. She tried to speak. Nothing came out but a bubble of blood that burst against her lower lip. He watched the bubble break. Then he stood, and the shadow left her face, and she thought, with a clarity that surprised her, that this was the moment. He would walk away. He would get back in his armored car with his clean men and his quiet doors, and he would continue on to whatever business had brought him to this dead-end street, and she would die here, and her body would be found by a sanitation worker at dawn, and Derek would read about it in the paper and feel nothing but relief. But the crouching man did not walk away. He said, "Load her into my car. Slowly. If you break her further, I will break you." Hands lifted her. Dozens of hands, it seemed, though in truth it was only 2 men, one supporting her neck, the other her hips. The pain was so vast that it transcended agony and became something else, a white silence that filled her skull and pushed out thought. She was carried. She was placed on a leather seat that smelled expensive. An engine started. The car moved, and the motion was so smooth that she almost believed she was floating. The crouching man sat beside her. She knew because she felt the shift of weight, the subtle indentation of the cushion. He did not touch her again. But he spoke, low and even, as if he were reading aloud from a ledger. "Your husband, Derek Vance, owes a significant sum to a man named Silas Romano. The debt has been outstanding for 11 months. Last week, Derek offered collateral he did not possess, specifically, you. In his desperation, he claimed he could deliver you as a gift to Romano in exchange for erasing his debt. Romano declined. He found the offer distasteful." A pause. "I find it instructive." Valerie could not process the words. They slid over her like water over stone. But she heard them. Some part of her was still listening. "Romano's refusal does not absolve Derek," the man continued. "It merely clarifies the terms. Your husband believed you were worth nothing. He attempted to trade you for a sum of $40,000. The man who declined that trade is now my enemy. And the woman left to die on that street," he turned his head. She could not see his face, but she felt his attention again, sharp and cold. "The woman left to die is now mine. Not as collateral. Not as a trade. As a statement." The car accelerated. Valerie's eyes closed. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness claimed her was the rustle of fabric. He had removed his jacket, she realized later, and laid it over her like a shroud. Not for warmth. For claim. When she woke, she was in a room that had no windows and a ceiling of polished white. A tube ran into her arm. Her ribs were wrapped. Her cheek was stitched with a precision that suggested a surgeon's hand. And in a chair by the door, watching her with eyes the color of tarnished, sat a man who had not yet told her his name. He spoke first. "Derek drove 3 hours to a motel on the state line. He is currently drunk and bragging to a bartender about his fresh start. He does not know you are alive." Valerie tried to sit up. The room tilted. She fell back against the pillows, and a sound came out of her, not a word, not a cry, but a raw vibration of pure animal survival. The man in the chair uncrossed his legs and leaned forward. He was handsome in the way a scalpel is handsome, functional, dangerous, without ornament. His suit was dark, his shirt was darker, and his tie was the exact red of a stoplight seconds before it turns green. "My name is Cashin Marchetti," he said. "And you, Valerie, are no longer a wife. You are no longer a victim. You are no longer the woman who crawled to a curb and waited to die. You are now a chess piece in a war your husband started when he opened his mouth and offered you like meat." He stood. Walked to the side of her bed. Looked down at her with an expression that was not kind, not cruel, but something in between, the patience of a man who had learned to wait for what he wanted. Derek sold you to a world you do not understand, Cashin said quietly. I am that world. You will learn to survive in it, or you will learn to die by it. But you will not crawl again. Not on my ground. He reached out. She flinched. He did not touch her. Instead, he picked up a small object from the bedside table, her silver wedding ring, cleaned of blood, placed on a square of black velvet. He held it between his thumb and forefinger, turning it so the light caught its cheap facets. This ring, he said, is the symbol of a man who left you for dead. I am not that man. I do not leave things unfinished. I do not throw away what still has value. He set the ring back on the velvet. When you are healed, you will have a choice. Stay, and become something more than a name on a missing person report. Leave, and I will put you on a bus to any city you choose, with enough cash to forget this night ever happened. He turned to go. At the door, he paused. But if you stay, he said without looking back, you will never be helpless again. And the man who did this to you will answer to a queen he never saw coming. The door closed. The lock engaged with a soft, final click. And Valerie lay in her white room with her broken ribs and her stitched cheek, and for the first time in 5 years, she did not feel cold. She felt the first flicker of something she had forgotten she was allowed to want. Revenge. Or perhaps, something even more dangerous, a reason to live. Valerie spent 11 days in the White Room before she was allowed to walk without pain. The surgeon, a nervous man named Pritchard who never met her eyes, came twice daily to change her bandages and murmur about bone density and scar tissue. Cashin did not visit again. But Marta came. Marta was 57 years old, built like a fire hydrant, and spoke only when necessary. She arrived on the third day with a tray of broth and a stack of clean linens. She did not introduce herself. She simply set the tray down, stripped the old sheets with military efficiency, and left. On the fourth day, she brought a hairbrush and sat on the edge of the bed without asking permission. She brushed Valerie's matted hair in long, silent strokes. When she finished, she tied it back with a black ribbon and said, "You have his mark on you now. That is not a curse. It is a warning to others." Valerie did not ask what she meant. She was learning that questions were a luxury for people who had not been left for dead. On the eighth day, a guard named Oren escorted her from the White Room into the penthouse. The transition was abrupt, sterile hallway to an elevator lined in walnut, then doors that opened onto a space so vast it made her stumble. Floor-to-ceiling windows faced a city she had only seen from ground level. The furniture was dark leather and brushed steel. A fireplace large enough to stand in sat cold against the far wall. And everywhere, were cameras. Black domes in the corners. Lenses embedded in the bookshelves. A single red light blinking from the smoke detector above the kitchen island. Marta was already there, arranging roses in a crystal vase. She did not look up. "Your room is the second door on the left," she said. "Clothes are in the closet. The shower has 6 settings. Do not use the third setting unless you want to peel your skin off." Valerie walked to the window. Below, cars moved like blood cells through arteries of light. Somewhere down there, Derek was drinking in a motel bar, boasting about his freedom. The thought should have made her angry. Instead, it made her hollow. She explored her room first. The closet contained dresses she had never worn, shoes in her exact size, undergarments she had not chosen. Everything was black, gray, or deep burgundy. No patterns. No prints. She touched a silk blouse and felt nothing. Then she opened the bedside drawer and found a notebook and a single pen. On the first page, someone had written in precise handwriting, *, "Fear is a muscle. Use it wrong, it tears. Use it right, it lifts stones." *. She did not recognize the handwriting. But she knew who had left it. That night, Cashin appeared. Not through the front door, through a hidden panel in the library that slid open without sound. He was dressed in the same dark uniform, but his hair was damp, and there was a shallow cut on his jaw that had not been there 11 days ago. He did not greet her. He walked to the bar, poured 2 fingers of whiskey, and sat in a chair that faced the windows. "Sit," he said. Valerie remained standing. He looked at her then, really looked, the way a hunter assesses a trap. "You haven't cried." "Not once. Marta told me. Crying never helped before." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." He drank. She watched his throat move. The silence stretched so long that she could hear the refrigerator hum from the kitchen. Then he said, "Derek tried to collect your life insurance. Did you know he had a policy on you?" Valerie's fingers curled into her palms. "No. $40,000. The same amount he owed Romano. He took the policy out 18 months ago. Listed cause of death as accidental." Cashin set his glass down. "The insurance company flagged it. They called the police. The police called me. Why would the police call you? He smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Because I own the police. Most of them, anyway. Valerie sat down. Not because he had told her to, but because her legs had decided. She sat in the chair opposite his, and for the first time, she met his eyes without flinching. What do you want from me? She asked. Cashin studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He placed it on the table between them. It was a photograph of a woman, mid-30s, dark hair, a smile that did not reach her eyes. Behind her stood a man with his hand on her shoulder. The man was Derek. Her name is Corinne, Cashin said. She's been living with Derek for the past 9 days. In the motel where he's been hiding. She thinks he's a traveling salesman. Valerie looked at the photograph. The woman's smile. Derek's possessive grip. The same grip he had used on Valerie's arm, her wrist, her throat. You're showing me this to hurt me, Valerie said quietly. No, Cashin leaned back. I'm showing you this to teach you. Derek did not leave you because you were unworthy. He left you because he is a parasite who requires a host. Corinne is his next host. In 6 months, he will bruise her ribs. In a year, he will break her jaw. In 2 years, he will leave her on a street very much like the one where I found you, unless someone stops him. Valerie's gaze dropped to the photograph. Corinne's eyes. That smile that did not reach. She knew that smile. She had worn it for 5 years. You want me to stop him, she said. I want you to learn to stop anyone who tries to make you pray. Cashin stood. He walked to the window and placed his palm flat against the glass. I have enemies, Valerie. Men like Silas Romano, who see women as currency. Men like my own lieutenants, who will test you the moment they sense weakness. And I cannot protect you from all of them. I can only give you the tools to protect yourself. He turned. The city lights reflected off his face, carving his cheekbones into blades. So here is your first lesson, he said. That photograph is yours now. Keep it. Look at it every morning. Remind yourself that the man who left you for dead is already hunting again. And then decide, will you hide from him, or will you learn to become the thing he fears? He left through the hidden panel. The library fell silent. Valerie picked up the photograph. She looked at Corinne's face. Then she looked at her own reflection in the dark glass of the window, pale, stitched, but standing. She folded the photograph and placed it in her pocket. Then she walked to the kitchen, found Marta, and asked for a map of the city, a list of Cashin's known associates, and a knife that fit in her palm. Marta did not smile. But something in her eyes shifted, a flicker of recognition, or perhaps respect. Second drawer on the left, Marta said. The paring knife with the black handle. And the maps are in the study, third shelf from the bottom. Valerie nodded and turned to go. Valerie, Marta said. She stopped. The third setting on the shower, Marta said quietly. It's scalding. I wasn't joking. Valerie almost smiled. Almost. She went to find the knife first. The knife with the black handle lived under Valerie's pillow for 3 weeks. She never used it. But she touched it each morning before she opened her eyes, letting the cool metal remind her that she was no longer empty-handed. Cashin kept his distance. He sent Marta with instructions, not warmth. Learn the layouts of 3 safe houses. Memorize the faces of Romano's known soldiers. Recite the chain of command in Cashin's organization until the names tasted like scripture. Valerie did all of it. She studied like a woman possessed because she was possessed by the quiet terror that Derek would find her again, and she would be ready. On the 22nd day, the terror found a new shape. Silas Romano sent an emissary. The man's name was Victor, a slab of muscle in an ill-fitting suit, and he arrived at the penthouse under a flag of truce. Marta showed him to the library. Valerie watched from the kitchen through a one-way mirror she had discovered behind a spice rack. Victor did not sit. He stood in the center of the room, feet planted, and delivered his message like a prosecutor reading charges. Romano knows you have the woman, Victor said to Cashin. He doesn't want her. He wants what she represents, a weakness in your armor. You picked up a stray off the street, Marchetti. A beaten wife. A nobody. Men are already whispering that you've gone soft. Cashin did not rise from his chair. He did not raise his voice. Tell Silas that the next man he sends through my door will leave in a bag. Victor's jaw tightened. He offers a trade. The woman for the docks on the east side. No blood. No war. No. He expected you to say that. Victor reached into his jacket. Valerie's hand went to her pillow knife, even though it was not there. But Victor produced only an envelope, cream-colored, sealed with red wax. He set it on the table. Then accept this as a warning. Derek Vance came to Romano last week. He offered information about your safe houses in exchange for protection. Romano declined again, but he did not kill Derek. He sent him away. Alive. And Derek is still talking to anyone who will listen. Cashin stood then. He moved slowly, deliberately, the way a storm builds on a horizon. He picked up the envelope, tore it open, and read the single line inside. His expression did not change. But Valerie saw his fingers tighten until the paper crumpled. "You delivered your message," Cashin said. "Now deliver mine. Tell Silas that the woman is not a stray. She is my blood now. And anyone who spills her spills me." Victor left. The door closed. Cashin stood alone in the library, the crumpled paper still in his hand. Valerie came out of the kitchen. She had not meant to. Her feet carried her before her mind could stop them. "What did it say?" she asked. Cashin turned. For the first time, he looked tired, not weak, but weathered, like a cliff that had taken too many waves. It said, "Your mother cried for mercy. The woman won't." Valerie felt the words land in her chest like stones. She did not know Cashin's mother. She did not need to. The grief in his eyes was a language she understood perfectly. "He's trying to provoke you," she said. "He's succeeding." Cashin walked to the bar and poured whiskey into a glass. He did not drink. He held it, watching the amber liquid catch the light, and said something she had not expected. "My mother's name was Vivian. She was 23 when she died. My father was not a good man, worse than Derek, if you can believe that. He sold her to settle a debt. The men who took her kept her for 3 days. When they were done, they left her in an alley behind a casino. I was 7 years old when I found her." Valerie's throat closed. She thought of the street where Derek had left her. The cold. The drain. The blood. "You didn't find me because you wanted a queen," she said softly. "You found me because you wanted to save your mother." Cashin set the glass down. He looked at her for a long moment, long enough that she saw the boy he had been, hiding behind the man he had become. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe I found you because you are the only person in the city who has ever looked at me and seen a man instead of a monster." The silence between them was different now. It was not a wall. It was a bridge. Valerie walked to the bar. She picked up the whiskey glass he had abandoned and drank from it. His lips had touched the rim. She did not care. "Teach me to fight," she said. "I already am." "No," she set the glass down. "Teach me to fight. Not to hide. Not to memorize maps. To put my hands on someone who deserves it and not stop until they are on the ground." Cashin studied her. The tiredness was still there, but something else was growing beneath it, something that looked like respect. "It will hurt," he said. "Everything hurts. It will change you. I am already changed." He nodded once. Then he walked to the hidden panel in the library, slid it open, and gestured for her to follow. Behind the panel was a staircase that descended into a basement she had not known existed. The basement was a gym, bare concrete, heavy bags, a mat stained with old sweat and older blood. Cashin rolled up his sleeves and stood in the center of the mat. "First lesson," he said. "Forget everything Derek taught you about fear. Fear is not something to survive. It is something to aim." He held out his hand. Valerie stepped onto the mat. She did not take his hand. Instead, she raised her fists, clumsy, untrained, but raised. Cashin almost smiled. "Good," he said. "Now hit me." She did. She missed. He corrected her stance with a touch that lingered half a second too long. She tried again. She missed again. On the third try, her knuckles grazed his ribs. He did not praise her. He did not need to. The look in his eyes was enough. They trained until her arms shook and her stitches ached and she could no longer tell the difference between sweat and tears. When she finally collapsed onto the mat, Cashin lowered himself beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat coming off his body. "Derek will come for you," he said quietly. "Not because he wants you. Because he heard Romano say you have value. And Derek cannot stand the thought of value that does not belong to him." Valerie stared at the concrete ceiling. "Then let him come. You are not ready. I know." She turned her head to look at him. "But I am not running either." Cashin held her gaze. In the dim light of the basement gym, with the stains of old fights beneath them and the weight of new ones above, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers traced the line of her jaw, not a caress, not quite. A question. Valerie did not pull away. She also did not lean in. "One thing at a time," she whispered. Cashin withdrew his hand. He lay back on the mat, staring at the ceiling beside her. "One thing at a time," he agreed. Above them, the city hummed with violence. Somewhere out there, Derek was planning. Silas was plotting. The war had not yet begun, but its shadow was already long. Valerie closed her eyes. Beneath her pillow in the room upstairs, the black-handled knife waited. But here, on the mat, beside a man who had every reason to be cruel and chose not to be, she felt something she had forgotten existed. Safety. Fragile. Temporary. But real. She did not thank him. He would not have wanted it. Instead, she said, tomorrow. Teach me to throw a punch that lands. Cashin laughed, a real laugh, low and rough, the first she had ever heard from him. Tomorrow, he said, I will teach you to throw a punch that breaks ribs. Outside, the wind shifted. The storm was coming. But for the first time in 5 years, Valerie was not afraid of the dark. 2 months passed like a blade drawn slow. Valerie learned to break ribs. She learned to disarm a man twice her size, to read a room for threats before she crossed the threshold, to walk into a den of Cashin's enemies with her spine straight and her face empty. The black-handled knife no longer lived under her pillow. It lived strapped to her thigh, hidden beneath dresses that had once felt like costumes and now felt like armor. Cashin did not touch her again. Not after that night on the mat. He trained her, fed her, housed her, protected her, but he kept a distance that felt less like rejection and more like restraint. She caught him watching her sometimes. In the library, when she studied his ledgers. In the gym, when she landed a blow he had not expected. His eyes would linger half a beat too long, and then he would look away, and the space between them would hum with something neither of them named. Then Derek made his move. He did not come himself. He sent a message through a dead drop, a photograph of Marta leaving a grocery store, her address written on the back in Derek's familiar, jagged handwriting. Below it, a single sentence, asterisk, return what is mine, or I take what is yours. Asterisk. Valerie found the photograph first. Cashin was meeting with his lieutenants in the study. She stood in the kitchen, holding the image of Marta's face, and felt something crack open inside her. Not fear. Not rage. Something older. Something that had been starved so long it no longer remembered its own name. She walked into the study without knocking. Cashin's men went silent. 4 of them, Oren, the guard from her first days, a bald-headed tactician named Rourke, a young woman with dead eyes called Sloane, and an old man whose name she never learned. They all looked at her standing in the doorway, a photograph in one hand and a knife on her thigh, and something in their postures changed. They had called her the Stray. Now they did not know what to call her. Leave us, Cashin said. The men filed out. Sloane paused at the door, looked Valerie up and down, and gave a single nod. Then she was gone. Valerie set the photograph on the study desk. He has Marta's address. Cashin did not pick it up. He already knew. I have 4 men watching her building. She is safe. He will find a way. He always finds a way. Valerie sat in the chair across from him, the same chair where she had first learned about Corinne, about the life insurance, about the shape of her own cage. I want to end this. You are not ready. I am not asking permission. Cashin leaned back. The firelight from the library hearth caught his face, carving him into angles of gold and shadow. What are you asking? Valerie reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded map. She spread it across the desk. On it, she had marked every location Derek had been seen in the past 3 weeks, a bar in the South End, a motel near the highway, a pawn shop where he had tried to sell her mother's necklace. She had added notes in precise handwriting, guard rotations, blind spots, escape routes. I am asking you to trust me, she said. Cashin studied the map. His finger traced her annotations. When he looked up, his expression was unreadable. But his voice was low. You want to draw him out. I want to give him what he thinks he wants. Valerie tapped a location on the map, a warehouse on the edge of Romano's territory, abandoned, unguarded. He believes you keep me locked in the penthouse. He does not know I have been training. He does not know I can fight. He thinks I am still the woman he left on the street. Cashin stood. He walked to the window and stood with his back to her. It is a trap. Yes. If it fails, he will kill you. Not leave you. Kill you. I know. Then why? Valerie stood. She walked to the window and stood beside him. Their shoulders did not touch. They were separated by a hand's breadth of air that felt like miles. Because Marta is the first person who brushed my hair without being asked, she said quietly. Because you showed me that fear is a muscle. Because I am tired of being the woman things happen to. I want to be the woman who happens. Cashin turned his head. He looked at her profile, the scar on her cheek, the set of her jaw, the way she held herself now, straight and unbroken. If you do this, he said, you will not come back the same. I know. There will be blood. Valerie met his eyes. Whose? He stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand, not gently, not romantically, but with the firm grip of a man making a vow. He turned her palm up and placed something in it. A key. Small, brass, warm from his pocket. The armory, he said. Take whatever you need. Valerie closed her fingers around the key. Thank you. Don't thank me. He released her hand. I am not doing this for you. I am doing this because I want to see what you become. The plan was simple. Valerie would leave the penthouse alone, without escort, at a time when Derek's informant, a crooked clerk at the front desk, would see her. She would take a car to the abandoned warehouse and wait. Derek would come. She would give him the choice, walk away forever, or face what she had become. She knew which he would choose. The night of the trap, the air was cold and still. Valerie wore black. The knife was on her thigh. A second knife was in her boot. A gun, small, light, loaded with hollow points, was tucked into the small of her back. She drove herself. Cashin watched from the penthouse window, she knew. His men were positioned in the shadows around the warehouse. She was not alone. But she felt alone. And that was the point. Derek arrived at midnight. His car was the same sedan he had driven the night he left her. He stepped out slowly, scanning the dark, and when he saw her standing in the warehouse doorway, he smiled. That smile. She had forgotten how much she hated it. "Valerie," he said. "Look at you. Standing. Walking. They said you almost died. They were right. But you didn't." He walked toward her, hands open, the picture of false concern. "I came back for you. You know that, right? Everything I did to protect us." She did not move. "You left me to die on a street. I made a mistake." He was closer now. 10 feet. 8. "I was scared. The debt. The men he sent. I panicked. But I'm here now. Come home with me. We can fix this." 6 feet. Valerie drew the knife from her thigh. The blade caught the moonlight, silver and sure. "Come any closer," she said, "and I will show you exactly what Cashin taught me." Derek stopped. His smile faltered. For a moment, she saw the truth beneath, the cowardice, the cruelty, the smallness of a man who had never been loved and did not know how to love. "Put the knife down, Valerie." "No. Put it down, or I will hurt you." "You can try." He lunged. She was ready. The fight lasted 90 seconds. Derek was stronger, but he was sloppy, drunk, desperate, unhinged. Valerie was not stronger. She was precise. She sidestepped his first swing, drove her elbow into his kidney, and brought the flat of the blade across his forearm. Not deep enough to kill. Deep enough to remind him she had teeth. He screamed. He swung again. She caught his wrist, twisted, and put him on his knees. The knife was at his throat. "Beg," she said. Derek's eyes were wide. Blood dripped down his arm. "Please. Please. I'll leave. I'll disappear. Just don't. You would not have shown me mercy." "No. No, I wouldn't have." Tears ran down his face. "Ugly. Real. But you are not me." Valerie looked at him. This man who had given her silver rings and broken ribs. This man who had taken her youth, her hope, her trust, and traded them for $40,000. She looked at him, and she felt the weight of the gun against her back, and she felt the knife in her hand, and she felt the ghosts of every woman like her who had not survived to hold a blade of their own. She lowered the knife. "No," she said. "I am not you." She stepped back. Derek stayed on his knees, sobbing. Cashin emerged from the shadows. He did not look at Derek. He looked only at Valerie, the blood on her hands, the steadiness in her eyes, the knife still held loose and ready. "It is done," she said. Cashin nodded. He gestured to Oren, who stepped forward and hauled Derek to his feet. "Take him to the police," Cashin said. "The confession is already written. The evidence is already filed. He will spend the rest of his life in a cell where no one will ever love him, and no one will ever fear him." Derek did not fight. He let them lead him away, and he did not look back. Valerie stood alone in the warehouse doorway, the knife still in her hand. Cashin walked to her. He reached out and gently took the blade from her fingers. He cleaned it on his sleeve and slid it back into the sheath on her thigh. "You did not kill him," he said. "No. Why?" Valerie thought about it. About Curran's photograph. About Derek's tears. About the woman she had been and the woman she was becoming. "Because killing him would have made me his," she said. "And I am no one's anymore." Cashin looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something she had not expected. He knelt. Not in submission. In reverence. He took her hands, bloodied, raw, shaking, and pressed them to his forehead. "You are a queen," he said quietly. "And I have been waiting my whole life to kneel before someone worthy." Valerie's breath caught. Her fingers trembled against his skin. "Stand up," she whispered. He stood. She kissed him. It was not soft. It was not gentle. It was the kiss of two people who had crawled through fire and found each other on the other side. His hands went to her waist. Her hands went to his jaw. The warehouse smelled of blood and rain and something that might have been hope. When they finally pulled apart, Cashin's forehead rested against hers. "One thing at a time," he murmured, echoing her words from the basement. Valerie closed her eyes. One thing at a time, she agreed. Outside, the storm that had been gathering for months finally broke. Rain lashed the pavement. Thunder rolled across the city. But inside the warehouse, there was only the sound of two broken people breathing together, and the quiet beginning of something that might, against all odds, become love. 1 year later, Valerie stood in the penthouse kitchen and peeled an apple. Marta watched from the table, nursing tea. The old woman had moved into the penthouse after Derek's arrest, not because she was afraid, but because Valerie had asked. That was the difference now. Valerie asked. People listened. You're thinking about him again, Marta said. Valerie did not deny it. Derek had been sentenced to 20 years. No parole. Corinne had testified. So had Valerie. She had looked him in the eyes from the witness stand and described the night he left her for dead. Her voice had not wavered. The jury had taken 40 minutes to convict. I'm thinking about all of it, Valerie said, setting the knife down. The street. The white room. The first time Cashin showed me the gym. She paused. The first time he kissed me. Marta set down her tea. And? Are you going to marry him or not? Valerie almost laughed. The question had been hanging in the air for 6 months, unasked and unanswered. Cashin had not proposed. He had not needed to. He had given her something better than a ring, he had given her a role. She managed his finances now. She sat at his right hand during negotiations. His men called her Iron Queen, not behind her back but to her face, with respect. I don't know if marriage is the right word for what we are, Valerie said. What word would you use? Valerie thought about it. She thought about the nights Cashin held her without speaking. The mornings she woke to find him watching her sleep, his guard down for once. The way he had killed a man who threatened her last winter, not with rage, but with precision, and then had come home and washed her feet because she had twisted her ankle running from the scene. Necessary, she said finally. He is necessary to me. Like air. Like the knife under my pillow. Marta nodded slowly. That is love. The ugly kind. The kind that lasts. That evening, Cashin found her on the balcony. The city sprawled below them, indifferent and endless. He stood beside her at the railing, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. Silas Romano sent another offer, he said. A truce? A trade. He wants the docks. He is offering 3 of his casinos. Valerie considered this. Counter-offer. 1 casino. The docks stay ours. And he returns the painting he stole from your study. Cashin turned to look at her. The painting is worth nothing. The principal is worth everything. He smiled. It was a rare thing, his smile, still sharp, still dangerous, but softer at the edges when it was just for her. You are better at this than I am. No, she said. I am better at this than you want to be. There is a difference. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. Not velvet. Not jewelry. A plain black tin, dented at the corners. He handed it to her without ceremony. Valerie opened it. Inside was a key. Not brass, like the armory key. Iron. Dark. Heavy. What is this? She asked. The front door, he said. To everything. The penthouse. The safe houses. The accounts. The organization. He paused. My life. Valerie held the key in her palm. It was warm from his pocket. She thought of the iron ring he had given her months ago, the one she wore on her right hand. She thought of the woman who had crawled on a dead-end street, bleeding and alone. That woman was a stranger now. This is not a proposal, she said. No, Cashin agreed. It is a recognition. You are already my queen. I am simply giving you the keys to the castle. Valerie closed her fingers around the iron key. She looked out at the city that had tried to kill her, the city that had remade her, the city that now whispered her name with fear and wonder. One condition, she said. Name it. If we ever have a daughter, she will never know this life. She will go to school. She will have friends. She will be free. Cashin was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I would burn the city to the ground for a daughter who never had to see it burn. Valerie turned to him. She took his face in her hands, scarred knuckles, steady fingers, and kissed him. Not the desperate kiss of the warehouse. Not the tentative kiss of first discovery. This was the kiss of a woman who had chosen her cage and found it had no bars. He pulled back first. His forehead rested against hers. I love you, he said. I don't know how to do it right. She remembered those words from somewhere. A dream, perhaps. A future she had already seen. Neither do I, she said. Let's be terrible at it together. Below them, the city hummed. Somewhere, Silas Romano was plotting. Somewhere, a woman named Corinne was rebuilding her life. Somewhere, Derek Vance was sleeping on a prison cot, dreaming of the wife he had left for dead. None of it mattered. Valerie slipped the iron key into her pocket. She leaned into Cashin's side, and he wrapped an arm around her waist, and they stood together on the balcony as the lights of the city flickered below. She was no longer the woman who had crawled. She was the woman who had risen. And the crown she wore was not made of gold or diamonds, but of scars and choices and the unbreakable steel of a heart that had refused to stop beating. The Iron Queen. The woman who happened. The end.
And that's the end of the story. I hope you loved it and you enjoyed it. Please like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on your notification. Leave your comments down in the comments section, and as always, stay dangerous.